The Duo Showdown challenge is this weekend, and if you get 12 wins, you're going to be able to unlock the new Warrior Bow skin. And it's a pretty cool skin, so I recommend you watch until the very end so we can go over all the tips for this challenge as well as the best comps and brawlers for every single map. So the most important thing you have to keep in mind when doing this challenge is that you want to be consistent. Showdown usually has a lot of variance and you can win a few games in the row and still get a 5th place every now and then. But you want to minimize your chances of doing that as much as possible, even if it means you're not going to get as many first places, just ensuring that you make it to the top 2 teams. You're still going to get a win when you do that, so that should be your main focus, not getting in those bottom 3 spots. So there are 2 main contributors to the large variance in Showdown, and that usually comes with getting pinched, where 2 teams come at you from opposite sides, and there's usually not much you can do. Usually you just try to break through one of the teams and see if you can win and escape through that side, or just try to escape before they can pull it off. But the best way to not get pinched is to try to just not put yourself in positions where you would be pinched, and usually that's going to be the center of the map. So if you play it relatively safe and stay around the outside for the most of the beginning of the game, you have a significantly less chance of getting pinched later on. And if you get those few brawl boxes starting off and then find a team who you are a bit stronger than, then you can apply pressure to them and start pinching them with another team, and that's going to make it a lot harder for your own team to get pinched. And the other thing that causes a lot of variance in Showdown and can basically just cause you to lose instantly is surprise attacks. Things like people hiding in bushes or just like an Edgar randomly jumping on you. So you got to make sure you can play to defend against these things. Just make sure you're checking all the bushes that you walk near. Not only does this guard against if anyone's hiding in the bush, but once you know for sure that no one's in the bush, you can sort of mark that off as your own territory and be sure that if you ever need to escape and run into one of those bushes, there won't be someone there waiting for you. So it's good to get that bush checking out of the way as soon as possible. And then for this challenge especially, you want to make sure you always have a way to counter Edgar. Everyone in the game has him because he came out for free, and he's a pretty strong brawler in Showdown in general, so I feel like many people will be playing him. And if you run 2 pretty strong brawlers but they both have low health, if an Edgar jumps on you, you're just going to lose right there, and there's probably not much you can do about it. So just to ensure that you have the highest likelihood of defending against whatever your opponents are, wherever they go, whatever brawlers they're running, then you just want to make sure you have that defense against Edgar and you position yourself to avoid pinching, and you make sure you're checking your bushes. And just always focus on playing safe and consistently rather than playing aggressive and going for the first place, because second place will also work just fine. So let's talk about the first map, which is Skull Creek. There's nothing really special about this map. It is a bit tight in the center with a lot of narrow passageways and choke points, so long range brawlers aren't as effective here, but they are still very good just in Showdown in general, especially Byron, who you're going to see in every single one of these maps. He's just a very, very good brawler in Duo Showdown right now because he can provide so much team support as well as fend for himself with his insane range and pretty solid damage on his own. So the best comp I would say is just Edgar and Byron. You have a lot of really aggressive potential with Edgar. Edgar's very good for sort of snowballing those power cubes because he can just start using his super aggressively on any team that is vulnerable and just get more and more power cubes. And then once you have a ton of power cubes, then you are free to use your super on whoever because you're probably going to be stronger than them. So Edgar is great in that aspect. He can sort of wait behind a wall until the right moment to strike because he has his gadget to charge up his super, and he just charges it up naturally. And then Byron's just great for having that extra healing and that extra damage and the ability to still pressure your opponents even when you're really far away from them. Now I know a lot of you might not have Byron yet, so a good substitute for Byron would probably be someone like B, also pretty long range as well as a huge threat to tanks, which lower level people tend to play a lot on Showdown and sort of just bush camp, and you're going to see a lot of people doing that. I think the meta for the first 2 maps, maybe just the first map, is going to be pretty random. I feel like people are going to be running random brawlers like you would normally see at very low trophy Showdown because there's still so many people participating in the challenge at that level. So B is a pretty good all-around brawler to sort of account for whatever your opponents are playing, and B just adds an extra layer of defense against Edgar because if you're running her honeycode star power, then you're going to buy yourself a free couple seconds of time after an Edgar jumps on you and almost wipes you out, and that's usually going to be enough for you to get a charge shot off on the Edgar, which is going to kill him. So Byron and Edgar and B are probably the 2 best comps. You could also pair like a Jackie with the Byron, though I think the Jackie will probably struggle against certain brawlers. She is very good at holding mid also, but like I said, it's better to sort of play conservatively and stay around the edges. So playing an aggressive brawler like that is fine, but do keep in mind it will increase your variance slightly because because you might just get pinched if you try to go in the center, because that's sort of the only place that Jackie can really go to get kills. Now next up we have the Feast or Famine map, and this one is a bit different from all the other maps, of course, because there's that giant grass donut in the center. So I strongly recommend to not rush inside that grass at the start of the match. That is an extremely RNG based thing of who comes out on top and who doesn't. You could run someone like a Bo or a Terra to make sure you have that increased visibility, and that way you can play a bit more conservatively and react to your opponents walking towards you. But in the end, it's just the safest to get the boxes and start powering up from the outside, because there are plenty of boxes on the outside and you can still charge up pretty well that way. And you can work together with other teams who are on the outside to sort of chip down whoever's in the center and work your way and try to gain control of that center later in the game. So out of the 3 brawlers, Byron, B, and Spike, I'd say if you pick any 2 of those, you probably should be good to go on this map. Byron obviously is just really broken, as I was talking about before. B also counters a lot of the tanks that people tend to play in the center on this map, so she's very good for retaking control of the center because she just outputs so much damage with her main attack, and is able to clear out a lot of the bushes with her Rattling Hive gadget as well. And similarly with Spike, it's very easy to find people in the center of the map, and if a tank ever comes near you, you should be able to output a lot of damage. Spike also counters Edgar fairly well, but it does make you a bit more vulnerable to those Edgar attacks. If Edgar times it right, he might be able to take you out, but I feel like there's going to be a lot less Edgar on this particular map because compared to the other tanks, he's not that great in taking control of the bushes in the center, and since he's a close range brawler, he probably doesn't do well at trying to chip down the people in the center in the middle of the game anyway. Now, if you don't have Byron or Spike because they are pretty rare brawlers, I would recommend going Jackie and Terra and playing a bit more aggressive, but make sure you always retreat out of the center if you see a lot of people starting to come towards you at the start. And Terra's gadget is going to make that really easy to do. Just keep in mind that you really want to play it safe, so get as many cubes as you can at the start, but staying alive is the most important thing of all. So even if you make it out with 0 cubes, that's still fine. You can still make it to second place, and that's sort of the mindset you want to adopt if you're going to run that comp. Now next up we have Rockwall Brawl, and I think this is very similar to the style of gameplay you're going to see on the first map, except now people will be better and they're probably going to be running more meta brawlers. So I would stick to those 2 comps that I talked about at the beginning of the video, Byron and Edgar or B and Edgar. I feel like they're the most balanced teams for these general standard type of showdown maps that lets you have support with the healing from Byron, it lets you withstand attacks from other Edgars, and it lets you apply your own pressure and aggression because you have an Edgar on your team. And you're good at long range, you're good at close range, you can output a lot of damage quickly. It just feels like a very balanced comp to have. But other than that, I don't think there's anything different I have to say about this map. It's basically the same. I feel like it's pretty similar to the first map. And finally, we wrap it up on Acid Lakes. So Byron and Edgar, once again, is going to be a pretty solid comp for this map. But since this map is a bit more open than the other showdown maps, you can also start to run more long-range brawlers like Piper. B, of course, is still a very good brawler here at close range or at long range. I think a comp like B and Piper could work particularly well because you can defend against Edgar's because you have the Honeycode star power and you have Piper's auto aimer gadget. I guess you could also run the homemade recipe gadget because it's just really good to finish off kills, but if you want to play the most safe you possibly can, I think the auto aimer gadget is better. But if you do have Byron, then Byron Edgar I think is the way to go, or Byron Daryl is another really good option for this map because there is so much water. Daryl can be very good at taking on surprise attacks that other brawlers in the game can't do, and especially at the end of the game as well with all that water in the center, it's good to be able to switch between sort of the very center of the map and outside that ring of water whenever you want. So Byron and Daryl I feel like is a very good combination, especially since Daryl has so many hit points that Byron is going to be able to buff up a lot of times throughout the match. So that's going to be it for the guide. If you're planning on going in with randoms, I would strongly advise against it. There are so many options. You could join my Discord I have linked in the description to search for teammates. You could probably just ask in the comments for teammates, or you can just use the built-in search for team feature on Brawl Stars. It really helps to have a coordinated team. But if you still want to go in alone, all I would recommend is that Edgar is a pretty solid choice because you can carry a lot of matches alone as Edgar. Byron is a bit more sketchy of an option because sometimes it does rely on your teammates being pretty competent, because if they die, a single Edgar could easily take you out alone. So I would opt for a more safe choice, and no matter what teammate you get, I feel like Edgar is always going to be one of the best plays on all of these maps. Maybe not Feast or Famine, I would go something more like B there, but that's basically what you want to think about if you're going in solo. So if you enjoyed, make sure to like the video and don't forget to join the Send Squad by subscribing, turning on notifications, and going to your settings and enabling notifications there as well. But that's all for today, guys, so see you later.